Commander Deho stood in front of the High Council chamber, holding his monthly report. The large room was filled with the most important leaders of the Catherian Empire. Their purple skin gleamed under the bright lights, and their 4 eyes watched him carefully. Deho had given this same report many times before. It was always boring, and today would be no different. The monthly threat assessment shows no real dangers to our empire, Deho said in a flat voice. He touched his data pad, and a list appeared on the big screen behind him. Pirates in Sector 7 have been dealt with. The rebellion on Malthus has been crushed. Trade routes remain safe. The council members nodded. This was what they wanted to hear. The Catherian Empire had ruled this part of space for over 1,000 years. They had the best ships, the strongest weapons, and the smartest minds. Nothing could threaten them. What about the old legends? Asked Council Leader Yonsik. Any new reports about the ancient threats? Deho almost smiled. This was the silly part of his job. Every month he had to report on old stories that scared children. Tales of monsters from dead worlds and ghost ships that sailed between stars. The usual nonsense, Deho replied. Some miners on Kelthera claim they saw strange lights. A trading ship captain swears he found old ruins with weird writing, and there are still those foolish stories about the Terrans. Several council members laughed at the last word. Terrans, or humans as they called themselves, were the most ridiculous legend of all. According to the old stories, they were a race that could live anywhere and fight like demons. The tale said they were impossible to kill and never gave up. Of course, everyone knew these stories were just made up. Humans, said Councillor Boram with a chuckle. I remember those bedtime stories. They were supposed to be small and weak, but somehow they conquered half the galaxy. Before they all died out, added another councillor. Good thing, too, if they were half as dangerous as the stories claimed. Deho closed his report. As always, there is no evidence that humans ever existed. They are just old stories told by primitive worlds to explain things they could not understand. But not everyone in the Empire thought the stories were silly. On the planet Nexus Prime, a young woman named Min Seo worked late in her laboratory. She was a xenoarchaeologist, which meant she studied the remains of alien civilizations. Her lab was full of strange objects and broken pieces of technology from dead worlds. Min Seo picked up a small metal object from her desk. It was smooth and gray, with strange markings carved into its surface. She had found it on a world that had been empty for centuries. The metal was unlike anything in Catherian science. It was stronger than their best armor, but lighter than air. When she tested it, the results made no sense. Computer, show me the analysis of sample HT-47, she said. A hologram appeared above her desk. It showed the metal object spinning slowly in the air. Numbers and charts surrounded it, but they all said the same impossible thing. The metal contains elements that do not exist in our periodic table, the computer said in its calm voice. The atomic structure suggests manufacturing techniques beyond current Catherian capabilities. Min Seo frowned. She had been studying objects like this for 3 years. All of them came from different dead worlds, but they all had the same impossible properties. And they all had the same type of markings. Markings that looked very much like the ancient human writing described in old legends. Computer, compare these markings to the theoretical human alphabet from the archive of lost civilizations. The computer was quiet for a moment. Then it spoke again. Match probability 87%. Min Seo felt her heart beat faster. She had requested permission to present her findings to the High Council 12 times. Each time they had said no. They said she was wasting time on fairy tales. But she knew she was right. The evidence was too strong to ignore. Meanwhile, on the edge of Catherian space, Captain Tae-Jin received another strange report. He commanded a patrol ship that watched the frontier worlds, the planets where civilization met the unknown darkness of space. Captain, said his communications officer, Yunji, we have another missing ship report from the mining station at Zirian. Tae-Jin sighed. This was the 5th ship to disappear near the Void Nebula in 2 months. The Void Nebula was a dark cloud of space dust and gas where sensors did not work well. Ships sometimes got lost there, but not this many. Any distress signals? Tae-Jin asked. No, sir. The ship Lucky Strike was carrying a full load of rare metals. They reported normal operations, then nothing. No emergency beacon, no final transmission. They just vanished. Tae-Jin studied the star map on his screen. All the missing ships had disappeared in the same area, near the edge of the nebula. But something else bothered him. The few survivors from previous incidents all told the same strange story. Bring me the file on the Moondancer incident, Taejin ordered. The report appeared on his screen. 3 weeks ago, the cargo ship Moondancer had been attacked near the nebula. Only 2 crew members survived. Their story was so crazy that most people thought they were lying or sick. They claimed their attackers used ships unlike anything they had ever seen. The ships moved impossibly fast and changed direction in ways that should have killed their crews. Their weapons went right through Catherian shields as if they were not there. But the strangest part was what the survivors heard on their radio. The attacking ships spoke in Old Catherian, Taejin read from the report, but they used words and phrases that have not been used for over 800 years. Taejin closed the file and looked out at the stars. Old Catherian was a language that only scholars studied now. It was the way people talked before the Empire was formed. How could pirates or raiders know such an old language? Deep in space, far from any Catherian patrol, something happened that would change everything. Ancient machines that had been sleeping in the cold darkness for centuries suddenly came to life. They were small, no bigger than a person's hand, but they had been waiting patiently for a very long time. The machines began to move through space, heading for different star systems. As they traveled, they started broadcasting a message. The message was not in Catherian or any other known language. It was in a tongue that had not been heard in this part of the galaxy for 1,000 years. Signal detected, said the computer on Taejin's ship. Source unknown. Language unknown. Taejin listened to the strange sounds coming from his speakers. The words meant nothing to him, but something about them made him feel cold inside. Keep monitoring, he ordered, and send a copy to Intelligence Command. On Nexus Prime, Minseo heard the same broadcast. But unlike Taejin, she understood some of the words. They were old human words preserved in ancient records, and what they said made her hands shake as she reached for her communicator. The message was simple, but terrifying. The children of Terra are coming home. Far away, beyond the edge of known space, ships began to move in the darkness. They had been waiting for this signal for a long, long time. 3 months had passed since the strange broadcasts began. The messages kept coming from different parts of space, always in the same unknown language. Captain Jinwoo had heard about them, but he never expected to meet whoever was sending them. Jinwoo commanded the exploration ship Star's Edge. His job was to visit new worlds and check for valuable resources. Today he was investigating a small planet near the border of Catherian space. The planet had no name, just a number, Sector 7 Delta Prime. Captain, called his sensor officer Kyung-ho. I'm reading something strange. There's a ship in orbit around the planet. Jinwoo looked at the main screen. At first he saw nothing. Then his computer adjusted the image and he saw it. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was long and thin like a knife blade. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, and it seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Is it one of ours? Jinwoo asked. No, sir. The design is completely unknown. And, Captain, it's big. Much bigger than it looks. Jinwoo felt nervous. First contact with unknown aliens was supposed to be handled by the military, not exploration ships. But here he was, staring at a vessel that clearly did not belong to any known civilization. Try to make contact, he ordered. Use standard greeting protocols. Kyung-ho worked at his station for several minutes. Then he looked up with a confused expression. Sir, they're responding. But they're speaking in perfect Catherian. Put them through. The main screen changed to show the face of an alien. Jinwoo expected to see something strange, but instead he saw a creature that looked almost like a Catherian. The being had pale skin and only 2 eyes, but the shape of its face was familiar. This is Captain Hyejin of the Terran Colonial Navy vessel Indomitable, the alien said. Her voice was calm and clear. You are in violation of Terran space. Withdraw immediately. Jinwoo felt his mouth go dry. Terran, that was another word for human. But humans were just legends. They could not be real. I am Captain Jinwoo of the Catherian Exploration Service, he managed to say. We did not know this area was claimed by anyone. Captain Hyejin tilted her head slightly. The Catherian Empire. Yes, we have heard of you. It has been a long time since we last spoke to your people. Last spoke? Jinwoo asked. When did that happen? About 953 years ago, Hyejin replied. Your records from that time are probably incomplete. Jinwoo's hands were shaking now. If this alien was telling the truth, then humans were not only real, but they had met Catherians before. Almost 1,000 years ago, are you really human? He asked. Hyojin smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. That's what your people called us, yes. We call ourselves Terrans now. We have grown since we left this part of space. The news of Jinwu's encounter spread through the Catherian Empire like fire. Within hours, every important official knew about it. The High Council met in emergency session, and for the first time in decades they looked worried. Commander Deho stood before them again, but this time his report was very different. The room was full of tension and fear. The ship captain's story has been verified, Deho said. We sent 3 more ships to the same area. They all confirm the presence of the alien vessel. The being calling itself Captain Hyojin has agreed to meet with our representatives. Humans, whispered Council Leader Yansik. They're actually real. It appears so, Deho replied. Min Seo, the xenoarchaeologist, has been brought in as an advisor. Her research suggests that humans were indeed a real species that lived in this galaxy long ago. The council members looked at each other nervously. If humans were real, then maybe other parts of the old legends were true too. The stories about their fighting ability and their refusal to surrender. What do they want? Asked Councillor Boram. Unknown, Deho said. Captain Hyojin has agreed to negotiations, but only on her terms. 1 ship, minimal escort, neutral ground. Admiral Byung-ho stepped forward. He was the commander of the Catherian Navy and had never lost a battle. His uniform was covered with medals and ribbons. This is obviously some kind of trick, Byung-ho said. 1 alien ship cannot threaten the entire Catherian Empire. I recommend we surround them with our fleet and demand their surrender. Sir, Deho said carefully, our scans of their vessel are troubling. Their technology appears to be significantly advanced. Impossible, Byung-ho snapped. We have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. These humans, if that's what they really are, have been hiding in dead space for centuries. They cannot match our capabilities. But Minseo had been studying every piece of data about the human ship. What she found made her sick with worry. The vessel's energy readings were off the charts. Its hull was made of materials that should not exist. And most frightening of all, the ship seemed to have no crew quarters. I think it might be automated, she told Deho in private. Or the crew might not need the same life support we do. What are you saying? I'm saying we have no idea what we're dealing with. The legends about humans might be more accurate than we thought. The meeting was arranged on an old space station between Catherian and human territory. Admiral Byung-ho insisted on bringing 50 warships as an escort. Captain Hyojin came alone. The space station was ancient and mostly empty. Its corridors were cold and dark. Admiral Byung-ho walked through them with confidence, followed by Deho and a team of advisors. They expected to meet with primitive survivors of a lost civilization. Instead, they found Captain Hyojin waiting in the main conference room. She stood when they entered, and Byung-ho was surprised by how tall she was. Her uniform was simple but perfectly clean. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Admiral Byung-ho, she said, your reputation precedes you. As does yours, apparently, Byung-ho replied. Though I must admit, until recently we thought your entire species was a myth. Understandable. We have been away for a very long time. They sat down at the conference table. Byung-ho tried to look confident, but something about the human captain made him nervous. She moved with perfect control and spoke as if she knew things he did not. Let's get to the point, Byung-ho said. What do you want? Nothing you can give us, Hyojin replied. We are simply reclaiming territory that once belonged to humanity. That was 1,000 years ago, Deho said. These worlds have been part of the Catherian Empire for centuries. Yes, Hyojin nodded. You moved into the space we left behind. That was efficient of you. Left behind? Byung-ho asked. According to our records, humans died out. Hyojin laughed, and the sound made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Admiral, we didn't die out, we left. There's a big difference. Left for where? Beyond the edge of your galaxy. We found new worlds, new stars, new possibilities. We've been busy. Byung-ho leaned forward. How many of you are there? Enough, Hyojin said simply. The negotiations continued for hours, but they got nowhere. The humans wanted their old territory back. The Catherians refused to give up worlds they had controlled for centuries. Finally, Byung-ho lost his patience. This is ridiculous, he said, standing up. You have 1 ship. We have 10,000. If you don't leave our space immediately, we will remove you by force. Captain Hyojin looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled that cold smile again. Admiral, you just declared war on humanity. I suggest you prepare accordingly. She stood up and walked toward the door. Just before she left, she turned back. "Oh, and Admiral, you might want to look outside." Byung-ho rushed to the station's observation deck. When he looked out into space, his blood turned to ice. The human ship was no longer alone. Dozens of other vessels had appeared around it, all with the same dark knife-like design. "How many ships?" he whispered. Daeho checked his scanner. 87. No, wait. More are appearing. 115. 140. The human ships hung in space like silent predators. They had appeared without making a sound or triggering any alarms. The Catherian fleet, for all their power and pride, suddenly looked very small. Captain Hyejin's ship began to move away, followed by the rest of the human fleet. As they disappeared into the darkness, a final message came over the communication system. "You have been warned," Hyejin's voice said. "Next time we meet, it will not be for talking." Admiral Byung-ho stood in the command center of the largest military base in the Catherian Empire. Around him, hundreds of officers worked at their stations, preparing for the greatest military operation in their history. The walls were covered with screens showing ship positions, weapon systems, and battle plans. "How many ships do we have ready?" Byung-ho asked his chief of staff. 10,347 vessels, sir," came the reply. "Every available ship in the Empire. We've called back patrol fleets from the outer territories and pulled ships from garrison duty." Byung-ho nodded with satisfaction. This was the largest fleet ever assembled by the Catherian Empire. It included massive battleships that could destroy planets, fast attack ships that moved like lightning, and support vessels carrying enough weapons to arm a dozen worlds. "What about intelligence on the enemy?" he asked. Commander Daeho stepped forward with his report. He looked tired and worried. For weeks he had been trying to gather information about human capabilities, but the results were not encouraging. "We have very little solid data," Daeho admitted. "Our scouts have spotted human ships in 17 different systems, but they never stay long enough for detailed scans. What we do know is troubling." "Explain." "Their ships move in ways that should be impossible. They accelerate too fast and turn too sharp. Our physics experts say their crews should be crushed by the forces involved." "Maybe they're using some kind of artificial gravity," suggested one of the other officers. "Maybe," Daeho said, "but that's not the worst part. Their energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever seen. One human ship produces more power than our largest battle station." Admiral Byung-ho waved his hand dismissively. "Numbers don't lie, Commander. We have 10,000 ships. Even if each of their ships is twice as powerful as ours, we still have them outnumbered by more than 100 to 1. In another part of the military complex, Minseo worked frantically in a small office they had given her. As the Empire's only expert on human culture, she had been asked to predict how the humans would fight. What she found in the old records terrified her. "Computer, show me all references to human military tactics from the archive of lost civilizations," she said. Holographic texts appeared around her, floating in the air like ghosts. Most were just fragments, pieces of stories that had survived the centuries, but they all said the same thing about humans. They never fought the way their enemies expected. One fragment caught her attention. It was from a race called the Vorthak, who had supposedly fought humans long ago. The text was damaged, but she could make out some words. "Do not fight like any civilized species. They do not follow the rules of war. They strike where you are weakest and run when you are strong, but they always come back. They never give up. They never surrender. We thought we had won, but..." The rest of the text was too damaged to read, but Minseo felt a chill run down her spine. She tried to get an appointment with Admiral Byung-ho, but his staff said he was too busy preparing for battle. Meanwhile, Captain Tae-jin received new orders. His patrol ship was being called back to join the main fleet. As he prepared to leave his post on the frontier, he received one last report that made him pause. "Captain," said his communications officer, Yoon-ji, "we're getting strange signals from the Sarion system." "What kind of signals?" "It's hard to describe, sir. The sensors show 12 objects moving through the system, but they don't match any known ship designs. They're too big to be fighters, but too small to be cruisers." Tae-jin looked at the sensor readings. The objects were indeed strange. They moved in perfect formation, like fish swimming together in the ocean. Their energy signatures were massive, far larger than anything their size should produce. "Are they heading toward the fleet assembly point?" he asked. "Yes, sir. At their current speed, they'll reach Carrion in about 6 hours." Tae-jin felt a cold fear in his stomach. Sarion was where Admiral Byung-ho planned to make his stand against the humans. If these objects were human ships, then the enemy had found them first. Send an immediate warning to Fleet Command, Tae-jin ordered. Tell them 12 unknown vessels are approaching Sarion. The message reached Admiral Byung-ho just as his fleet finished forming up in the Sarion system. 10,000 Catherian ships arranged themselves in perfect battle formation, creating a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across space. It was the most beautiful and terrifying sight in the galaxy. 12 ships? Byung-ho laughed when he heard the report. They're sending 12 ships against my entire fleet. This will be over before it starts. But Commander Daeho was not laughing. He had been studying the sensor data from Captain Tae-jin's ship, and what he saw made no sense. Sir, he said carefully, these ships are producing energy readings equivalent to our largest dreadnoughts. If there are only 12 of them, each one must be incredibly powerful. Impossible, Byung-ho snapped. No ship can be that powerful and still move. The energy requirements alone would require a power plant the size of a moon. Then how do you explain these readings? Before Byung-ho could answer, the human ships appeared. They came out of hyperspace in perfect formation, 12 dark shapes against the stars. Compared to the massive Catherian fleet, they looked tiny and fragile. All ships, this is Admiral Byung-ho. He broadcast to his fleet. Target the enemy vessels and prepare to fire on my command. Thousands of weapons locked onto the human ships. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen planets was aimed at 12 small targets. Byung-ho smiled with confidence. Fire, he ordered. The space around the human ships erupted in brilliant light as thousands of energy beams and missiles struck their targets. The explosion was so bright it lit up the entire system. When the light faded, Byung-ho expected to see nothing but debris. Instead, the 12 human ships hung in space, completely undamaged. Impossible, Byung-ho whispered. Sir, called his tactical officer, their shields absorbed everything. Our weapons had no effect at all. The human ships began to move. They spread out in a pattern that seemed random at first but quickly revealed itself as something far more sophisticated. They moved like dancers, each one perfectly positioned to support the others. Return fire, came a calm voice over the communication system. It was Captain Hai-jin, speaking from the lead human ship. What happened next would be remembered as the most one-sided battle in galactic history. The human ships opened fire with weapons that defied every law of physics the Catherians knew. Beams of pure energy cut through their strongest shields like they were made of paper. Missiles that moved faster than light struck targets before the sensors could track them. But the most terrifying thing was how precise the humans were. They didn't just destroy ships. They disabled them with surgical accuracy. A single shot would take out a ship's engines, leaving it helpless but alive. Another shot would destroy weapon systems without harming the crew quarters. They're not trying to kill us, Daeho realized. They're playing with us. Admiral Byung-ho watched in horror as his magnificent fleet was torn apart in minutes. Ships that had taken years to build were reduced to floating wreckage in seconds. The humans moved through his formation like wolves among sheep, striking where they were least expected and vanishing before return fire could reach them. All ships, retreat, Byung-ho finally ordered. Fall back to the outer perimeter. But there was nowhere to run. The human ships were everywhere at once, moving impossibly fast and hitting targets with perfect accuracy. When one of Byung-ho's dreadnoughts tried to escape, a single human ship appeared in front of it and fired once. The massive vessel split in half, its crew scrambling for escape pods. Captain Tae-jin watched the battle from his position on the edge of the system. His small patrol ship was too far away to join the fight, but close enough to see everything that happened. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. The human ships moved like living things, bending and flowing around Catherian weapons fire. They seemed to know where every shot would be fired before the trigger was pulled. When they attacked, it was with a precision that was almost artistic. Captain, Yoonji said in a shaking voice, I'm monitoring communications from the fleet. 70% of our ships are either destroyed or disabled. Tae-jin couldn't believe what he was hearing. In less than 20 minutes, the greatest military force in Catherian history had been reduced to scrap metal and rescue operations. How long has the battle been going on? He asked. 17 minutes, sir. 17 minutes. That was all it took for 12 human ships to defeat 10,000 Catherian vessels. Tae-jin realized that everything they thought they knew about warfare was wrong. The human ships stopped firing as suddenly as they had started. They regrouped in the center of the system, surrounded by the wreckage of the Catherian fleet. Admiral Byung-ho's flagship was one of the few ships still operational, but it was badly damaged and helpless. Captain Hyejin's voice came over the communication system again. Calm and professional. Admiral Byung-ho, this engagement is concluded. You have lost approximately 7,000 ships. We have not fired on your escape pods or medical vessels, as is proper according to the laws of war. Byung-ho sat in his command chair, staring at the screens that showed the destruction of his fleet. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. How? The news of the disaster at Sirion spread through the Catherian Empire like a disease. In the capital city of Vorthak Prime, crowds gathered in the streets demanding answers. How had their mighty fleet been destroyed so easily? How could 12 alien ships defeat 10,000 of their best vessels? Commander Daeho stood in the wreckage recovery facility, staring at pieces of metal that had once been proud warships. Teams of engineers and scientists worked around him, trying to understand what had happened. The debris told a story that no one wanted to believe. Show me the analysis of hull section Alpha 7, Daeho said to the chief engineer. A woman named Jiwon pulled up a holographic display of a piece of twisted metal. It had once been part of the armor plating on a heavy cruiser. Now it looked like it had been cut with a knife. The damage is unlike anything we've seen before, Jiwon explained. The metal wasn't melted or blasted apart. It was simply removed. At the molecular level. What do you mean, removed? I mean the human weapons somehow convinced the atoms to stop being there. They didn't destroy the metal, they just made it go away. Daeho felt sick. This was beyond any technology the Catherian Empire possessed. It was beyond any technology they could even imagine. What about the energy readings from their ships? He asked. Impossible, Jiwon said flatly. According to our sensors, each human ship was producing more power than our largest star. That can't be right, but I've checked the data 100 times. So how do we fight them? Jiwon looked at the twisted metal in her hands. Commander, I don't think we can. In another part of the facility, Minseo worked with a team of xenobiologists to study the few human artifacts they had managed to collect. What they found was even more disturbing than the weapon technology. These aren't made by organic beings, said Dr. Sang-ho, the lead biologist. Look at this tool. He held up a small device that looked like a simple handle. But when Minseo touched it, it immediately changed shape to fit her hand perfectly. When Dr. Sang-ho touched it, it changed again. It's adapting to whoever uses it, Minseo said. But how? The material seems to be semi-intelligent, Dr. Sang-ho replied. It's not alive exactly, but it responds to biological input. I've never seen anything like it. Minseo thought about the implications. If human tools could adapt to any user, what about their ships? What about their weapons? Were the humans themselves adapting during the battle? Dr. Sang-ho, she said carefully. What if the humans have changed since they left? What if they're not entirely biological anymore? The doctor's face went pale. You mean they're cyborgs? Or something even more advanced? The legends always said humans were masters of adaptation. What if they adapted beyond our understanding? Meanwhile, Captain Tae-jin reported to the emergency meeting of the High Council. As one of the few officers who had witnessed the battle and survived, his testimony was crucial. The council chamber was packed with frightened officials and military leaders. Tell us exactly what you saw, demanded Council Leader Yeon-sik. Tae-jin stood before them, still shaken by what he had witnessed. The human ships moved like they were alive. They anticipated our tactics before we used them. When our fleet tried to surround them, they were already moving to counter the maneuver. That's impossible, said Admiral Byung-ho. He had survived the battle, but his spirit was broken. No one can predict battle tactics that precisely. Unless they can read our minds, Tae-jin said quietly. The room fell silent. The idea was too horrible to consider, but it explained everything they had seen. Or, said Minseo, who had been granted permission to speak to the council, they have such advanced computers that they can calculate every possible move we might make. She activated a holographic display showing the battle from Tae-jin's perspective. The human ships moved through the Catherian formation like they were following a script. Watch how they position themselves, she said. Every movement serves multiple purposes. They're not just fighting one battle, they're fighting every possible battle at the same time. Counselor Boram shook his head. This is insane. They're just another alien species. They can't be gods, can't they? Mincio asked. We know humans left this galaxy almost 1,000 years ago. What if they've been improving themselves all this time? What if they've become something beyond what we can understand? The debate was interrupted by urgent news from the frontier. Admiral Byung-ho received a priority message on his personal communicator. His face went white as he read it. What is it? Demanded Yeon-sik. The humans have taken the Malthus system, Byung-ho said. They're moving deeper into our territory. How many ships? The same 12. The council erupted in panic. If 12 human ships could destroy their entire fleet, what could they do to defended worlds? We need to evacuate the outer colony, said Councillor Boram. And go where? Snapped another councillor. If they can defeat our military, nowhere is safe. In desperation, Admiral Byung-ho decided on one final gambit. He would gather every remaining ship in the Empire and launch a surprise attack on what their intelligence suggested was the human command vessel. It was a desperate plan, but it was all they had left. We'll hit them before they expect it, he told his remaining officers. Even if they're more advanced than us, they can't defend against an attack they don't see coming. Daeho tried to warn him. Sir, they've anticipated everything else we've done. What makes you think they won't see this coming too? Because this time we're not following standard tactics, Byung-ho replied. We're going to do something completely unpredictable. The attack was launched 3 days later. Byung-ho led a fleet of 800 ships in a direct assault on the human vessel that seemed to be coordinating their forces. The plan was simple. Get close enough to use nuclear weapons and destroy the enemy command ship before they could react. The attack succeeded. Byung-ho's ships managed to get within weapons range of the human vessel and fired everything they had. Nuclear missiles, plasma cannons, and particle beams all struck the target simultaneously. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. When the light faded, the human ship was damaged. For the first time since the war began, they had hurt the enemy. Byung-ho felt a moment of triumph. Then his sensors picked up new contacts, hundreds of them. The space around his fleet suddenly filled with human ships, all identical to the one they had just damaged. Where did they come from? He whispered. Unknown, sir, replied his tactical officer. They just appeared. Captain Heejin's voice came over the communication system, but this time she didn't sound calm and professional. She sounded cold and angry. Admiral Byung-ho, you have just made a mistake. You attacked a hospital ship. What? The vessel you damaged was providing medical aid to survivors from your previous defeats. It was clearly marked with humanitarian symbols. You have violated the laws of war. Byung-ho checked his sensors. The human ship they had attacked was indeed broadcasting medical identification signals. In his desperation to strike back, he had attacked a ship trying to help his own people. You wanted to see what happens when you hurt one of ours, Hyojin continued. Now you will learn. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. The human ships destroyed Byung-ho's fleet with clinical precision, but this time they showed no mercy. Every Catherian vessel was reduced to atoms. No escape pods were spared. No survivors were taken. Admiral Byung-ho's flagship was the last to die. As the human weapons tore through his ship, he realized the terrible truth. The humans had never been fighting at full strength. The battle at Sirion had been a demonstration, a warning. This was what happened when they were actually angry. Tell me, Hyojin's voice said over the communication system as his ship died around him. Was it worth it? Byung-ho tried to respond, but his ship exploded before he could speak. Back on the Catherian homeworlds, the news of the second disaster caused complete panic. The government began to collapse as officials fled to hidden bunkers or tried to negotiate private peace deals with the approaching human forces. It's over, Daeho told Mincio as they watched the chaos in the capital. We've lost everything. Maybe, Mincio replied. But at least now we know what we're really dealing with. What do you mean? The humans aren't just more advanced than us. They're more advanced than we can become. They've moved beyond anything we understand. We're not fighting another species. We're fighting evolution itself. In space, the human fleet continued its advance into Catherian territory. But they were no longer fighting. Word was spreading that resistance was pointless. Whole star systems surrendered without firing a shot. The age of the Catherian Empire was ending and a new age was beginning. An age belonging to humanity. 6 months had passed since the fall of Admiral Byung-ho's fleet. The Catherian Empire, which had ruled this part of space for over 1,000 years, no longer existed. In its place was something the surviving Catherians had never expected. Peace. Commander Deho walked through the streets of Vorthak Prime, the former capital of the Empire. He wore no uniform now. There was no Catherian military left to serve. But instead of the chaos and destruction he had expected, he found something that confused him. The city was cleaner than it had ever been. The old slums where poor workers had lived in misery were gone, replaced by decent housing that everyone could afford. The air was cleaner too. The pollution from the old factories had somehow been removed overnight. How did they do all this so quickly? Deho asked Minseo, who walked beside him. I've been trying to figure that out, she replied. According to the construction workers I talked to, the humans didn't just rebuild everything. They improved it. The new buildings are stronger, more efficient, and they seem to repair themselves. They stopped in front of what had once been the unemployment office. Now it was a training center, where former soldiers and workers learned new skills. Through the windows they could see Catherians working alongside human instructors, learning to use technology that had seemed impossible just months ago. They're teaching us, Deho said with wonder. Why? That's what I keep asking myself, Minseo replied. They could have enslaved us or killed us all. Instead, they're making our lives better. Inside the training center, Captain Taejin was learning to operate a new type of spacecraft. The human instructor, who called herself Dr. Sujin, was patient and helpful. She never acted like she was superior, even though her technology was centuries ahead of anything Catherians could build. The important thing to remember, Dr. Sujin explained to the class, is that these ships respond to your intentions as much as your actions. Don't just think about where you want to go. Think about why you want to go there. Taejin raised his hand. Dr. Sujin, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Why are you helping us? We tried to destroy you, Dr. Sujin smiled. It was a warm, genuine smile, very different from Captain Hyejin's cold expressions during the war. Because that's what we do, she said simply. We left this galaxy a long time ago, but we never forgot where we came from. When we came back and found other species living here, we had a choice. We could be conquerors or we could be teachers, but we attacked you first. Yes, you did. And you lost. But losing a war doesn't make you evil. It just makes you wrong about something. Everyone is wrong sometimes, Taejin thought about this. In the old empire, defeat had meant slavery or death. The idea that it could mean education and improvement was completely foreign to him. Dr. Sujin, he said, what happened to humans during the 1,000 years you were away? The instructor was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how much to tell them. We grew, she said finally. When we left this galaxy, we were just another species trying to survive. We found new worlds, new challenges, new opportunities. Each challenge made us stronger and smarter. Did you conquer other species? Some, but we learned that conquest is inefficient. It's much better to have willing partners than unwilling slaves. So we started offering other species the chance to join us instead of forcing them to submit. Another student raised her hand. How many species are part of your confederation? Dr. Sujin smiled again. As of last month, 4,732 species have chosen to become part of the Terran Confederation. You will be number 4,733 if you accept our invitation. The classroom fell silent. 4,000 species. The number was beyond anything they had imagined. How do you manage so many different civilizations? Taejin asked. The same way we manage everything else. Carefully, patiently, and with respect for everyone involved. It took us 900 years to learn how to do it right. Elsewhere in the city, Minseo met with Captain Hyejin in what had once been the Catherian government building. The meeting room was the same one where the High Council had made their decision to go to war. Now it was decorated with plants and artwork from dozens of different worlds. You wanted to see me? Hyejin asked. She was dressed in civilian clothes now, and she seemed more relaxed than during their previous encounters. I have questions, Minseo said. About humanity. About what you've become, Zask. Are you still human? I mean biologically human. Hyejin considered the question. That depends on how you define human. We still have the same basic genetic structure we've always had, but we've made some improvements. What kind of improvements? We live longer. We're stronger and smarter. We can adapt to different environments more easily. Some of us can survive in vacuum or underwater. Others can interface directly with our computer systems. And your ships? How do they work? The same way we work. through adaptation and improvement. Our ships are partially alive, partially mechanical. They grow and learn and change based on what we need them to do. Mincio felt overwhelmed. You're not just more advanced than us. You're something completely different. Yes and no, Heejin replied. We're different from what we used to be, but we're still recognizably human. We still have the same basic drives and desires. We want to explore, to learn, to grow, to help our children have better lives than we did. Is that why you're helping us? Partly, but also because the galaxy is a big place and it's better when everyone works together. What happens now? Mincio asked. What happens to the Catherian people? That's up to you, Heejin said. We're offering you membership in the Confederation. If you accept, you'll have access to our technology, our knowledge, our protection. In return, you'll contribute to the common good and follow our basic laws, which are, don't hurt people who aren't hurting you. Don't take things that don't belong to you. Help others when you can. Work to make the galaxy a better place for everyone. Mincio laughed despite herself. Those are very simple rules. Simple rules work better than complicated ones. Most conflicts happen because people make things more complex than they need to be. A few days later, the former High Council met to vote on humanity's offer. The chamber was much quieter than it used to be. Many of the old councilors had fled or died during the war. The remaining members represented a broken people trying to decide their future. The terms are generous, said Councillor Boram, who had somehow survived the chaos. Full membership in their confederation with all the benefits that brings. What about our independence? Asked another councillor. We'll have local autonomy, Boram replied. We can govern ourselves as long as we don't violate their basic laws. And if we refuse? They leave us alone. No punishment, no revenge, but also no help and no protection. The vote was unanimous. The Catherian people chose to join the Terran Confederation. 1 year later, Taijin stood on the observation deck of a human starship, watching as construction began on something incredible. In the space above the former Catherian homeworld, massive machines were building a gate. It was a ring of metal and energy large enough for the biggest ships to pass through. What is it? He asked Captain Hyojin, who stood beside him. A gateway to the rest of the Confederation, she replied. When it's finished, you'll be able to travel to any of our member worlds instantly. How many worlds is that? About 4 million at last count. Maybe more by the time we finish building this. Taijin tried to imagine 4 million worlds, all connected by gates like this one. The scope of human civilization was beyond anything the Catherians had ever dreamed of. Captain, he said, may I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Do you ever miss being smaller, simpler? Heejin thought about the question. Sometimes. There was something appealing about only having to worry about one world, or one star system. But then I think about all the species we've helped, all the worlds we've saved from disaster, all the knowledge we've gained by working together, and I realize that growing beyond our original limits was the best thing we ever did. As they watched, the gate came online for the first time. Energy flowed through the ring, creating a portal to somewhere unimaginably far away. Through the opening, they could see another world, green and blue and beautiful. Welcome to the wider galaxy, Hyojin said. Your real journey is just beginning. At that moment, automated messages began broadcasting across the galaxy in hundreds of languages, including Catherian. Welcome to the Terran Confederation. Your application for membership has been approved. Mincio, now serving as Earth's first Catherian ambassador, smiled as she heard the announcement. She was aboard a ship heading to humanity's homeworld, Earth, to begin her new position. Through the window, she could see stars she had never imagined visiting. The age of the Catherian Empire was over. The age of the Terran Confederation had begun. And for the first time in her life, Mincio looked forward to the future.